A big decision has been reached as cases surge across the Philippines. Virus epicenter Metro Manila retains its alert level 3 status until the end of the month. This, as the healthcare system in the region is not yet at critical levels. 82 other areas nationwide have also been placed under alert level 3 for the remainder of January. Meanwhile, 22 areas have been placed under alert level 2, which would include Palawan and parts of Mindanao that have yet to see any surge in cases.
The alert level system might come in handy for the conduct of face-to-face classes. The Education Department is considering using an area's alert level status as a signal if face-to-face classes may be conducted. The expansion phase of face-to-face classes were set to begin this month. But as more and more students and faculty alike test positive for COVID-19, schools and regional offices of DepEd have declared health breaks. Good evening. I'm Maricel Halili.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. As students and teachers face or recover from infections at home, many schools took the opportunity to declare a health break.
We give you a run-through of the institutions that have hit the pause button so far. This big story in my report. With more than 300 students and close to 90 faculty members testing positive for COVID-19, pamantasan ng lungsod ng Maynila is pressing the pause button. They have started an academic break last January 10 and will last until the 16th.
Bagamat many of them will not be required to go to the hospital, but it will be very difficult to concentrate. So sa kanila, kailangan talaga magpahinga.
The same goes for De La Salle University in Taft, Manila, which suspended classes until Saturday as 60% of students and faculty contracted the virus. But the whole Manila city will be following suit. The local government has declared a break for all levels in public or private schools starting January 14 until January 21.
Makapagpahinga yung ating mga guro at yung mga magulang. Mabawasan yung anxiety level nila na uma-absent yung kanilang anak.
Marikina City has also announced a break from January 17 to 29 in all levels. DepEd Calabarzon also announced a suspension of classes on those dates. As for Metro Manila, DepEd NCR will be halting classes from January 15 to 22. Question now is, will a national health break be in the offing? For the Commission on Higher Education, that may not be necessary.
Ang marami sa kanila ay hindi na kailangang utusan ng pamahalaan dahil alam na nila yung kanilang gagawin. No? Either adjustments doon sa pag-delay ng limited face-to-face at saka yung paggawa ng mga academic break.
According to CHED, 126 universities are already on break, majority of which are from NCR and Region 4A. For the Education Department, there's a need to strike a balance between health and learning needs.
Hindi po kami lahat na naniwala na kailangan gawin ito sa buong bansa kasi hindi naman po para-parehas ang sitwasyon sa COVID sa lahat ng lugar.
DepEd has set a meeting with the Health Department on Monday to draft the plan for the restart of in-person classes. For News 5, Maricel Halili, We Are One News.
Is the current academic break enough to address the concerns of the education sector as we deal with another surge? That big question and more with ACT Party List Representative Franz Castro. Representative Castro, welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie and Maricel. Thank you.
Ma'am, is the 2-week health break enough? Should this surge be longer than expected? Do you see any extension of the break happening? And for that matter, is it contingent on the numbers ng COVID or is it really just a matter of giving people a break?
Yes, the ACT Teachers Party List, Robbie, supported the call of the teachers for 2-week health break because many of the teachers, based from their survey in the National Capital Region, that majority of the surveyed teachers have experienced flu or cold cough and fever. So that's why we supported the health break suggestion of our teachers. And I think that the 2 week health break is enough, no, to recuperate those teachers and students or even parents that are suffering from those flu-like symptoms or disease. So 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 that so that's why the teachers are happy because of the decision of, especially in the National Capital Region, for health break.
In the meantime po, nasa kalagitnaan pa rin po tayo ng surge. So maliban po sa break, what else do we see the teachers and the students needing?
Yes, siguro Roby, ang mga kailangan pa rin ng mga teachers natin, yung medical support. So kailangan din na hindi kasi pwede yung mag-isolate ka lang at nandoon ka lang sa bahay. They have to be kailangan rin sila, confidence din sila na hindi yun COVID. So kailangan talaga ng free testing sa ating mga teachers or pwede rin mga estudyante or parents. So kailangan talaga mag-conduct ng mga testing. At pangalawa, yung support din para sa medical ng ating mga teachers. So they really need that dun sa kanilang sa pagpapagaling dun sa kanilang mga sarili. So yun yung mga kailangan, Roby, no. At saka dapat kung talagang health break ito, they are saying na sana real break, walang mga ipagagawa sa bahay sa mga teachers or sa estudyante, talagang pahinga at pag-recuperate doon sa kanilang nararamdamang karamdaman.
Okay, maraming salamat po, ACT Party List Representative Franz Castro.
Thank you.
Some parts of the Philippines, if classes are put on hold for some parts of the Philippines, over in France, teachers staged a wide-scale protest against pandemic work conditions in schools. The French Education Ministry said almost a third of teachers stayed away from their classrooms during the strike. The teachers went on strike after France decided to ease school protocols once again, despite an ongoing surge in COVID-19 infections. Teachers are calling for clarifications on rules and more protection, such as extra masks and tests. Passengers from 153 countries have been banned from transiting through Hong Kong airport as part of the city's zero COVID policy. The 1-month ban on transit flight applies to countries categorized as high risk because of the Omicron variant. The move comes as Hong Kong has seen around 50 cases of the Omicron variant since the end of last year. In India, more than 1 million Hindu worshippers gathered at the banks of the river Ganges for a holy bath. This as the country battles rising COVID cases. Hindus believe bathing in the holy river during the Makar Sankranti festival washes away sins.
These are the other big stories tonight. Mystery passengers? The Department of Transportation plans to deploy UN uniformed personnel or ununiformed personnel inside jeeps to see to it the no vax, no ride policy is properly enforced. The Philippines lifts its ban on travelers from countries on its red list. Those fully vaccinated from areas with high COVID risk will now be allowed to enter. No longer His Royal Highness Prince Andrew loses all military titles and royal patronages over sexual allegations. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Maricel Halili. While there might be some pushback against it, the no vax, no ride policy will push through on Monday.
In order to ensure its enforcement in jeepneys, the Transportation Department says they might tap some undercover riders. Gerard de la Peña with this report.
Despite facing intense opposition, the no vaccine, no ride policy will push through on Monday. As early as now, jeepneys around the metro have started to put up posters reminding commuters that unless you're fully vaccinated, you're not allowed to get a ride. There are exemptions though for those with medical conditions and those availing essential goods and services. But let's face it, the new rule will be hard to implement in jeepneys.
Alanganin naman. Kasi bababa pa kami. Magche-check kami ng pasahero namin, di ba?
So mahirap po?
Mahirap eh. Dapat merong may naman. May magche-check talaga.
The Transportation Department has already tapped the MMDA, the LTO, the LTFRB, and the Highway Patrol Group. But this may not be enough. And so, they're looking at deploying mystery riders.
Bakit ho sila dapat ma-deploy? Upang masigurado ho natin na kahit wala hong naka-uniforme na enforcer ay sumusunod po ang ating mga drivers dito sa ating polisiya at dito ho natin makikita kung paano po ma-implement itong ating programa.
Bulk of the responsibility still lies with the drivers who are tasked to check vaccination cards. Failure to do so might result in fines.
Kami naman po ay humihingi ng paumanhin at pag-unawa sa inyong lahat. Ang department order na ito po ay temporary lamang. Temporary lamang upang maiwasan natin ang sitwasyon na magkaroon muli tayo ng public transportation shutdown.
The policy also applies to those coming in and out of Metro Manila via land, sea, air, and rail.
Ang ating pong mga operators, ang ating pong mga rail operators ay inatasan po ang ating mga frontline personnel na siguraduhin pong maipapaliwanag ng maayos at politely ito pong ating ipinapatupad na polisiya.
Rail operators and airlines have expressed support for the directive. For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
The daily COVID case count continues to break records each day. Tonight's big number, 37,207. 3,000 more than yesterday's number of new COVID cases. We end the week with more than 265,000 active cases. The positivity rate decreased slightly. It is now at 47.3% from 47.9%. 81 more people died of COVID, pushing the death toll closer to 53,000. Fortunately, more people are recovering from the disease, with 9,027 recoveries reported today.
A former cabinet official of the DOTr administration is now crying foul over the amendments to the Public Service Act. The very measure his former boss wants updated as soon as possible. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez has the story.
The proposed amendment to the Public Service Act is being called discriminatory by some politicians and businessmen. Former Palace spokesperson and senatorial aspirant Harry Roque, for one. Senate Bill 2094 bars state-owned enterprises from owning capital in critical industries. Roque says this clearly targets China, where most public services are state-run.
This is discriminatory to China, to People's Republic of China. We are supposedly liberalizing even the provision of public service, and yet here is an instance where we are expressly discriminating against foreign-owned enterprises.
The bill aims to open up the country to foreign investments in industries like airlines, telcos, and shipping. It actually doesn't mention China by name, but business leaders echoed Roque's sentiments.
We are concerned about the prevailing xenophobia. It targets China companies, especially China state-owned companies. We should not legislate xenophobia, and we should be watchful of these inserted provisions in our laws.
Lavinia also said the country has one of the most restrictive investment policies and appealed for equal opportunity to foreign investors. Roque called it unconstitutional.
If we're going to argue that the distribution of electricity is vested with national interest considerations, where is the threat? Chinese were allowed to enter the NGCP for quite a number of years already, and there is no proven threat to national security.
The bill, which has been certified as urgent by President Duterte, is being finalized by both houses in a bicameral meeting. Congress is targeting to pass the bill before the end of Duterte's term. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
For the big story in sports, player movements continue in the PVL. Alongside that, the league is looking to implement some fresh changes come the 2023 season. The details in Gretchen Ho's report.
A major revamp is in the works for the storied volleyball franchise PLDT ahead of the PVL Open Conference. For starters, they will now carry a new logo under a new moniker, the High Speed Hitters. And with that comes a new coach, former PSL champion George Pascua. A new lineup is also up for reveal in the coming days. The Petrogas Angels have already bared theirs. They snapped Aiza Maizo Pontillas, MJ Phillips, and Bang Pineda, as well as Perlas veteran Nicole Chanzon.
Every move siguro for me is an opportunity to grow. Yung labanan siguro dito, Ate Getch, is really yung pag-adjust, yung kung gaano ka kabilis mag-adjust dun sa new team mo. Gusto kong ma-maximize yung platform na ibibigay pa rin sa akin habang nandito pa ako sa industry.
So what does PVL President Ricky Palou think about the recent player movements?
Everybody's just trying to strengthen their lineups. It will make the teams more competitive. The competition will be better.
Come 2023, Palou says a lot of changes are in store for the PVL. Aside from a draft system for rookies, they're also looking at trading guidelines to ensure fairness and growth. But the most impactful change, a salary cap.
Our recommendation is to have a minimum cap of 30, a minimum salary for players of 30,000 a month. We're looking at a maximum of 150,000 a month.
Oh.
Now, we understand that there are players that are over the maximum that we want to recommend. Okay? In this case, we will allow the teams to maintain those salary levels.
Palou says these proposals still need to be agreed upon, but it's a step in the right direction. And while it's still a long way before 2023, volleyball fans have plenty to be excited for this year. If all goes to plan, the first Open Conference will open by February 16 in a bubble setup either in Batangas or Tagaytay. The second conference, which is in the middle of the SEA Games and Asian Games, will host 2 foreign teams, as well as a national team. The third conference, meanwhile, will be a reinforced conference with imports. Plenty of volleyball action is on its way. Gretchen Ho, We Are One News.
Time for another quick break. When we return, an Sambayan government convener believes that we can bid goodbye to the Marcoses' ill-gotten wealth should Bongbong win the presidency. Travelers from areas high risk for COVID are now allowed entry, but there's a catch. They have to be fully vaccinated. And the royal family removed Prince Andrew's military titles and royal patronages as Prince Andrew faces allegations of sexual abuse in court. These big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Maricel Halili. Even as former Senator Bongbong Marcos still runs the risk of disqualification, his closest rival and Vice President Leni Robredo would rather beat him in the elections.
But should Marcos still win, an isang bayan convener says that we can say goodbye to the Marcos ill-gotten wealth. Mayan Los Baños with the story.
If it were up to Vice President Leni Robredo, a victory in the presidential election would be sweeter rather than have former Senator Bongbong Marcos be disqualified from the race. In a TV interview, Robredo said defeating Marcos would put an end to the narrative he is trying to push that Robredo cheated in 2016. Marcos has 4 disqualification petitions to hurdle. Should he be allowed to run and potentially win, retired Supreme Court Justice and Sambayan convener Antonio Carpio says the country can bid goodbye to the yet unclaimed ill-gotten wealth by the Marcoses.
If Bongbong Marcos becomes president, I do not expect the 125 billion to be recovered anymore.
Carpio fears Marcos as president can abolish the Presidential Commission on Good Government, which has been at the forefront of recovering the Marcoses' ill-gotten wealth. According to Sambayan, the PCGG has recovered 174 billion pesos so far from the Marcos family. 125 billion more have to be taken back. Add to that the more than 200 billion pesos in estate taxes that Marcos has yet to pay.
He has been ordered by the court to pay. He refuses to pay up to now. And nobody seems to hold him to account for that. If he becomes president, lalo na. Goodbye na yan.
Bongbong's camp dismissed Carpio's statements as purely speculative, even accusing Carpio of urging the filing of petitions against Marcos, which they describe as nuisance. Robredo, who was endorsed by Sambayan, refused to comment on Marcos's disqualification cases. She recently got the endorsement of senior officials of the Ramos administration. Reporting for News 5, Mayan Los Baños, we are One News.
Time for an express look at some of the day's big stories. The mini rollout of COVID vaccines for 5 to 11 years old is set to begin on the first week of February. The reformulated doses of Pfizer vaccine is expected to arrive by the end of January. Vaccinations Secretary Carlito Galvez says vaccinating kids is key to reopening schools. Government lifts its travel ban on countries on the red list. Travelers from areas with high COVID cases will be allowed entry so long as they are fully vaccinated. Acting presidential spokesperson Carlo Nograles said that proof of vaccination will be required. However, the palace clarifies that the country is still not open for tourists.
In world news, the visa row for tennis superstar Novak Djokovic continued. Australia has cancelled Djokovic's visa for the second time as the tennis star is said to pose a health risk to the country battling a COVID surge. Cancellation means Djokovic is barred from getting a new visa for 3 years except under compelling circumstances. The visa cancellation puts Djokovic's dream of a record 21st Grand Slam in peril.
Over in the UK, it's not looking bright for Prince Andrew, as Queen Elizabeth II has decided to strip all his military titles and patronages. This comes amid Prince Andrew's court fight against a lawsuit in which he is accused of sex abuse. Virginia Giuffre, the victim, says that the prince forced himself on her when she was just a minor. Although the prince has denied all accusations, he still concedes his continued association with sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who allegedly trafficked Virginia. In a statement, the Buckingham Palace said the prince will not continue to undertake public duties and must defend his case as a private citizen. Some Londoners, meanwhile, praised the move of the royals.
Ultimately, I think it's the right thing. He should take responsibility.
I'm really happy that the royal family isn't defending him anymore, so I hope the justice will be served.
The trial will begin in September or December if no settlement will be reached by both parties. For News 5, MJ Marfori, we are One News.
As the saying goes, you're never too young to dream big. And dream big did Zara Rutherford.
Zara is expected to become the youngest woman to fly solo around the world when she returns to Belgium on Monday. In August 2021, the 19-year-old departed from Western Belgium to begin her 51,000-kilometer journey. This has since spanned over 5 continents and 52 countries, including the United States, Greenland, Russia, and Colombia.
In addition to entering the Guinness Book of Records, the teenager has expressed her intention to motivate other girls to study science, as well as spark their interest in aviation. The title for youngest woman to fly solo around the world, currently held by Shaista Wise, who broke the record in 2017 at the age of 30.
Galing. Girl power.
Kahit hindi solo, baka makalipad lang. Pwede na.
Ako din. Sang-ayon ako sa iyo dyan. Kahit hindi solo, basta maka-travel, go na ako
Hindi
dyan.
ko kailangan ng world record.
And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
For Gretchen Ho, I'm Maricel Halili. We are One News. Good evening. Have a great weekend.